There are a few types of verbs in the preterito that have irregular yo forms. They all use the regular endings, but the yo form, and only the yo form, is slightly different. These verbs have spelling changes only in the yo form of the preterito. This applies to the following verb endings: car, gar, and zar. We often call these the car, gar, zar verbs. So here are some examples. With sacar, you have the car ending. Now the trick with the letter C is that it has two sounds in Spanish just like it does in English. It has a hard sound that sounds like k, and that happens before a, o, u. So ka, ko, q, you get that hard C, which sounds like a k sound. You can also have a soft C. Soft C happens before E and before I, and that's going to sound like S, like an S sound. So here's what happens. When we want to form the preterito, the first thing we do, as always, is take off the AR ending, and then we are left with SAC. But the yo ending is an E. So all of a sudden we have CE, and that's going to make us, with a soft sound, say S. But we don't want to say S because the verb is sacar with a hard K sound. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the C to make it a hard sound. And the way you do that is you change the C to QU. And that makes us pronounce this sake. Whereas if we were to leave it a C, it would be sase, which does not sound at all like the verb sacar, which is what we want. But the other forms of the verb all start with A or O, which leaves us in that hard category, so we don't have to change any of those. So the rest of them are the same. Sacaste, sacó, sacamos, sacastes, sacaron. GAR verbs work similarly because just like in English, the G has two sounds in Spanish. It has a hard sound that sounds like G, and that happens before A, O, and U, just like the hard C. So we have ga, go, gu. But it also has a soft G. Now, the soft sound in Spanish is different than it is in English. In English, we say je or ja, but in Spanish, we say h. So remember that this is the one that's going to sound like a h sound, and that happens before E and I. So again, the same thing happens with gar verbs that happens with car verbs. When we take off the AR verb and we want to add the yo ending, which is an E, all of a sudden it throws us to the soft G, but we don't want that. We want to keep it hard. The way you make a soft G, a h sound, hard, a g sound, is you add a U. So you're going to end up with G-U-E, so that we say pague. If we don't have that U in there, we have to pronounce it pahe, which is not the same thing. But again, we have A and O for the rest of our endings, so we stay in the hard format, which is fine. So the rest of the forms are fine. Pagaste, pagó, pagamos, pagastes, pagaron. ZAR verbs are a little different because it's not as much about sound, but it is a little bit. Let me explain because it gets a little crazy. So, ZAR verbs. We already learned that the soft C sound is with CE and CI. So what happens if you want to do a S sound, but you have to put it before an A or an O or a U? The answer to that is it's a Z sound. So a soft C sound or an S sound, all right, is ZA, ZO, ZU. So here we have empezar, which is ZA, but we don't have any Z option over here before E, which is what's going to happen. Remember, I take off the AR, then I want to add E as my ending, but I don't have a Z something ending for a S sound. And that's why if we want to do E or I, that Z is going to change to C. And that is why you very rarely, if ever, see words in Spanish that are spelled ZE or ZI. The only time that happens is if it is a foreign word that's been taken into Spanish. Otherwise, it's going to be spelled with a C. So I'm sure you've guessed what we're going to do. We are going to change that Z to C so that it's empecé. Here, it does not affect the pronunciation. It's just that you wouldn't, in authentic Spanish, see the ZE combination. The others, again, are fine because they all fall here. So we're going to have empezaste, empezó, empezamos, empezastes, empezaron. Please remember that we are not saying Z here. Z is an English pronunciation. In Spanish, the Z is pronounced S. So I hope that helps with just those tiny little spelling changes. And now that you have these notes, you're going to go on and do some conjugation practice.